Welcome to Risks and Trends, an annual Polityka Insight conference. This year, due to pandemic unpredictability, we've decided to organize it in a studio without audiences. Together with our friends, partners and guests, we will try to show you the world as we see it. My name is Hanna Cichy, and I'm an analyst on economy in Polityka Insight. Today I will be pleased to talk about the future of labor market and education and how we can prepare to the inevitable changes. In the first part of our debate, I will talk about the future of the labor market and what is the prospect of both employees, companies. And I will talk to Rafał Albin, who is the Marketing and Operations Director at Microsoft. You represent a company which, while providing simple in use, user-friendly software, last century, it revolutionized the way we work and play and learn. Last year, the largest accelerator of this revolution was pandemic. Today, there is no doubt that it will significantly accelerate the automation of the workplace. And it's not only about the automation of simple manual tasks, but also partly through the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning, the automation of the tasks of white-collar workers. When I take a look at a public and academic discussion about how the future of the labor market will look like, I see two confronting narratives. One I would call new Luddite narrative, which says that as a result of automation, in the future, we will not see so many jobs to ensure the current level of professional activity, which will lead to serious social challenges. The second narrative says that as a result of the demographic aging of populations, some kind of demographic catastrophe, we'll see a shortage of employees to maintain an increasing number of retirees. According to the General Statistical Office, in 2050, every third Pole will be retired. And this burden of maintaining an increasing number of retirees by a decreasing number of working people will lower the quality of life. What do you think in 10 or 15 years we will have enough jobs or not? Well, I'm on the positive side of this dilemma. I think that jobs will change, the expectations will also change, and I think we'll talk about it. The nature of the work will change, but we'll see a shift which will not lead and maybe will positively impact how the labor market will look like. And I think right now we can take a look at certain trends. What are the changes? We can see that certain positions which require repetitive activities, which some jobs which require manual data entry or things which in the past looked normal, right now they are slowly changing its characteristic. Right now, if you take a look at certain trends and tendencies, it seems that we are increasingly moving towards creative skills, drawing conclusions, and artificial intelligence-based activities. Certain elements of our work cannot be replaced by technology. Wherever a communication is required, whenever we need an human interaction or advanced decision-making processes and some kind of efficiency and agency activities will stay in the human domain. However, these areas will be strongly supported by the most modern technologies. And as an example of this change, which is most understandable for everyone, and you just mentioned that it was in the last century, a simple Excel software product, which enables its users not only to do some simple activities, but also it enables to quickly transform certain data from pictures and templates, but also an advanced analysis and also sharing, which saves a lot of time, and certain activities which were connected with data processing are replaced, but new jobs come in their place. So it is a common example, but we also have more advanced technologies connected with artificial intelligence or self-learning algorithms, which, in my opinion, will impact this change. However, overall, they will increase the pace of human development and the expectation of their skills. I also see this positive aspect of automation, which frees us from some menial, repetitive, monotonous tasks, but from a point of view of many blue-collar workers, they would be just dangerous for humans. So I think that the future of work is much a safer work. But it also means that we'll have to not only develop in future generations among our children and current pupils, many people with different competencies, but this future is happening already today, and there will come a moment when we'll have to do something as the society, as a country, as employers, with people who were doing their job in a traditional way, and they will have to change. We need to requalify them. Is it possible that maybe 80% of the society makes decision, have creative competencies? How quickly are we able to affect this change, and whose responsibility it is? Should it be business, as those who are employing and also are selling their products, or should it be the state, or should it be an individual responsibility of every person who reads this kind of research and says, well, my job is going to disappear in 5 years, what am I going to do about it? I think that first, this is an evolution which may seem very dynamic, but this is an evolution, not a revolution. So these are continuous changes which gives a certain ability to adjust of both the environment and the employees to what is being currently expected and required. And to your specific question, who is responsible for that? Is it an employee or employer or the state? Well, each of these stakeholders, there is no one entity responsible. I think that in every place there is this responsibility. Partly, when we take a look at these employees, the employees from younger generations realize that their work will be connected with new challenges and new areas. Let me give you my own personal example. I was being employed at Microsoft, and I had some specific skills, but it was the world which was here a dozen or so years, and in the meantime I noticed that starting as a person responsible for a product group, I had to change my area of specialization and enter more into technology. Then I had two more changes, so I'm witnessing the dynamically changing expectations, which I feel that I'm responsible to learn and to develop, because I realize that otherwise I will be able to achieve it. And there is also some responsibility on the employer's part, the organizational culture, and an ability to develop by employees is something which is on the side of the employer together with employees, and the employer should create such a culture. The research show, and I'm referring here to our Microsoft study, that creation of such an environment means that employees who are encouraged to develop are trying to improve their qualifications, which increases the efficiency of the company, and it leads to the continuous development of competencies trend. So on one hand, an employee needs to have this willingness to develop, and on the other hand, the employer should ensure such possibilities. When I was preparing to this meeting, I was reviewing some stuff in the internet, and here the widely understood state as an organization which is creating a certain framework through education, higher education, created a new specialization. It is psychology and IT, so it's all about humanizing technology. So we can see that right now the young persons who are preparing to enter the labor market and professional market are prepared from a different perspective. They are combining some soft and hard competencies, technology with humanism. So this is something new. Answering your question, at every stage there is some component of responsibility for doing this change. If we as employees don't understand and don't feel a need, if our employers do not understand and will not create this kind of environment and will not inspire us, will not support us, and if the state in itself through institutions preparing us to our work will not make sure that we will understand the processes, then this whole evolution will be much slower. And such positions which just appeared, and I was just reviewing some of the positions which didn't exist 10 years ago. And they employ not only persons who have some specific education. On a position of data visualizer, we can have somebody who perfectly understands the data, but also knows how to visually present them. But also, we can have a person who used to be a graphic designer, has some analytical skills which enable her or him to show this data in a clear way. Well, so this is a new position which combines two worlds, a person who comes from two different worlds. So the question whether this person had a need and possibility to develop these skills. I could give you much more examples, but sooner or later we'll see an educational possibility or a major on a higher education that we will have a data analyst. I think we already have on colleges such places on universities where you can actually study and train data analysis. Many of these positions are being taken by persons who come from different worlds and they develop these skills. Not denying what you've just said, and based on my own experience and of my company, this is a picture where many employees have a similar experience. So the employees and employers are both thinking how to adjust to the changing labor market, and this process is taking place in corporations in an evolutionary way. But I think I need to change the accent, because in a corporation and big technological company we can organize this educational process. In small and medium companies the situation is different, and in Poland it's 2/3 of all jobs, so we don't see these possibilities. And in many such professions, when we have these menial repetitive tasks, for example a profession of driver which may be pushed away by self-driving cars, the trade when we'll see less companies because the checkouts will be automated. I'm not convinced that an employer will have this strong motivation to think about the development of his employees, or he will just focus on part of it because he will not find a need for the rest of the people. And these are specific jobs which can be easily predicted. I think here a responsibility should be placed on the state, because we can expect that it will happen by itself. Well, if I might, we didn't mention one more important trend which we can see, and this is a deeper civilization trend, not necessarily connected with technology. How societies are changing its employment structures, and I do agree that not everyone can become a data visualizer or a person connected with a new profession, but a certain structure of employment or the structure of the labor market changes significantly. Take a look, what is the share in GDP of the Western countries, is the production, and what is the share of services. We see the change of characteristic of certain positions, and I would like to stress once again that certain positions connected with human-to-human communication will not be replaced. What may happen is that their characteristic will change. For example, the checkouts in stores will be automated, but some other areas connected to services will be open, because the sector of very personalized services in small companies may develop, and it is continuing to develop. So I think that the problem you've flagged is not connected with technology. It's part of a wider trend, I would say. Coming back to the situation of the employees, which may learn on the job, and those who will be more intensely cooperating with artificial intelligence or machine, I think that we can also see a certain challenge for an employer consisting in the disappearance of the so-called middle skills, so the tasks which we could learn while being on the job, but when the processes can be automated, the company will have a problem to train and develop the young employees, because in the past those middle competencies and skills were a kind of a workshop or training. I heard that this is a problem in the legal industry, because, for example, drafting the contracts used to be a job of young employees. Right now these processes are being automated, and there is no longer a possibility to train them because it disappears. How to go about the development of the career path of an employee when certain skills just disappear? Well, it's difficult to refer to the legal industry because I'm not familiar, but you use an important word, tasks. And having some discussions before our conversation, one of my colleagues flagged me an interesting thing, and he was right. A dozen or so, when I was employed on my position, my job description was focused on tasks. So there was a lot of tasks in my job description. Right now I reviewed some job descriptions, not at the highest level, at various levels, and the job description is goal-oriented. So maybe, just maybe, I'm not sure, but in my opinion, it's one of the scenarios. We will not see a disappearance of the career path, but the approach will change by defining various and different goals for specific stages of development. It's difficult for me to respond to this legal area, but I also participated in the recruitment process when we were looking for a person who would be young, not very experienced. And of course, it was strongly connected with data. It was a business analyst. In the past, it would be mostly about data analysis and presenting it to his manager. Right now we focused on the skill of drawing conclusions and presenting certain solutions based on these conclusions. This is the same employee who may not have this experience. His efficiency and agency will not be so big, but he will be responsible not only for completing a task of gathering the data and charting some simple trends. The expectation is that based on his creative skills, he will be able to reach certain conclusions and present them as a proposal to his superior. These may not necessarily be perfect conclusions, but at his level, what he's expected to do is completely different than in the past. Will it limit his development? No, just the opposite, because we are shifting from automated tasks to more creative tasks, because these simple activities can be done by technology. And what we are now supporting is the decision-making, autonomous decision-making, and data analysis skills. So I see a certain change. So I see a limited threat of the career path and its development within the organization. Well, it's difficult for me to respond to this legal part, but on this specific example, I think that this risk may be also an opportunity. If we expect that our employees are going to learn to try new things, we have to drastically, radically increase a possibility that an employee makes a mistake. When I speak to my colleagues, you have some research, so maybe you will tell me some more. I will use this not very representative sample of my friends working in legal or financial professions. I can see that there is not much permission to err or to make a mistake, and that means that employees are not willing to move out of their comfort zone. Well, I think that a matter of making mistakes at work is part of the job. Of course, if we continue to do routine tasks, the question if doing certain things routinely for 15 years, will it not lead us to errors and to mistakes? Of course, it is a matter of the organizational culture. I think we have the process of employee development to make sure that this error can be made. So the weight of an error of an employee also changes. I think that an error or making a mistake will also be part of the job. Well, it is difficult to say how it is in the different companies. In my company, nobody will praise me for making a mistake or error, but there is a great expectation that I will make some move, even realizing that I can make a mistake, rather than I will not do anything. So not doing anything is worse than making a mistake. And I understand it. On one hand, it may force you to act, not having a certainty that you will succeed. But it is resulting from the fact that we are not living in a world of certain, and it is obvious that we will live in an increasing uncertainty. We will be living in the world which is not so certain. And if we are in such an environment, we can make an error sooner or later, and it will happen. But moving on, if a company stays in the same place, because the development of a company may also lead to a mistake or error, and the environment around it is going to change. The company will not survive. Jack Welch made this famous quotation, one of the most famous General Electric presidents: if the environment around the company changes faster than the company itself, this company is on the decline. Could we paraphrase it and put the employee in the center of this quotation? I don't think so. But I think that the environment around the company will be less and less defined, more and more uncertain, and it will mean that we'll be making decisions based on an increasing number of data, and we will be making a decision based on the data from data expert. However, we will always try to minimize the risk of an error. And with that, thank you for this conversation.
we are going to talk about the education, how Polish school coped during the pandemics. We're going to write in a report by Polityka Insight and Friendly Country Foundation report. This report will be published in the coming weeks, and the persons who are interested, please follow our channels in social media and also visit our website. Today I would like to talk how and what to teach in order to prepare the youths, but also all of us, those who are studying, those who are learning, to the challenges of the future. The future where the social and political life will be shaped by two mega trends, deep demographic changes and an ever-present technological progress. How to prepare for this future, I will ask Hanna Micińska, who for years has been dealing with education and educational future pedagogues, Konard, Ciesiołkiewicz, who is the president of Orange Foundation, who is a coach and manager, and Magdalena Radwan, who is the president of Good Education Foundation, who is a sociologist of education and co-founder of the School of Education. From the report of Davos Forum, we can read that due to automation, within the next 5 years, 85,000 jobs will disappear. They will be replaced by some new jobs created in other branches. The same report says that among the most important competencies are the analytical thinking, creativity and flexibility. Is there anything that you would like to add to this list? Well, we found ourselves in a huge crisis that my generation is not familiar with, and I think that this is an experiment and crisis through which we go is showing us that there's a need for these competencies, but also the deficits of these competencies. So depending on what is the source, we can find new names. For example, ability to give a sense to what we do. These are the virtues which worked out during the crisis when we talked about the teachers, because this is a good example. When we talk about the role of the teachers, more than 600,000 people plus their families, which is more than 700,000. They are in a great crisis, and please remember that this is yet another radical change which happened over the last 2 years. And I had this experience, maybe without naming the names, a deputy director who's also an IT teacher. She lives close to the city of Kalisz, and we asked how the school cope with the transition to remote learning, and the director says that it was okay. It was very effective. The school had 100 tablets, and they distributed to the families. And myself, working at the corporation, I thought they would need a whole staff of the IT guys, IT support. And she said she was the only support. So 24 hours a day, she would reach out to these families. She would distribute the tablets and devices, and it worked out. So it seems that if this system works, it is possible, thanks to a huge cost, but also thanks to the virtues of the people who have the sense of a mission. And this deputy director I named is one of the examples. When we think about the future, we are thinking about many years ahead, but often it happens just in front of our eyes right now. Of course, probably it's not the majority, but this is happening in our view. These are the competencies of the future. But apart from the group of teachers, these are the competencies that we will need, all of us, as consumers, citizens. You wanted to take the floor. I wanted to answer. I'm very happy that President Ciesiołkiewicz referred to virtues, because These are the competencies of the future, but also competencies of the past. Of course, we use a new language and orient on a goal, but when we take a look at the old competencies, and we already have them. So this is not, well, the conditions are new, and the recipe is traditional, and that's why this Aristotle rhetoric is very fitting. But what we call the Prussian school in this debate changes optics. Here the problem is how to reach every student with these competencies. And I like two takes on these competencies, Professor Carol Dweck and Angela Duckworth. In one take, we are orienting on the development rather than effect, and second competence, which is important, is stubbornness. These are just names, but when we talk about resilience, adaptability, trying to find a sense or purpose, these are just the different names of the same thing. And I think the main problem is how. I will ask you how in a moment. Would you like to add something about these competencies? Well, I'm also thinking about the education of the teachers. This is a serious problem. I would like to thank for the word mission, because whenever I speak to adult teachers, when I talk about the mission, about their calling, they are a little bit unwilling to admit it. I often ask about the motives. Often they would say, I need this paper because this gives me a lot of employment opportunities. It is not often the school, but other places. And I'm really terrified by this approach. In many cases, it's also a matter of self-awareness. I often deal with it. Those who would like to become teachers have one pattern according to which they were trained. This is this old pattern of education. You said blended learning, but who heard about it? I'm not referring here to big cities. It needs to be started somewhere. And you mentioned this deputy director who was also an IT teacher. It must have been a good IT teacher, so she will be able to cope with various requests, podcast, webinar. But this is not a popularized competence. I see that many people are just in the classroom because they asked me to do something. I see this more passive attitude. Where can we see the care for a student? But this teacher was also groomed to behave like that. So now the problem of self-awareness of a teacher, what kind of a profession it is? Is it a mission-oriented profession? Do you feel it? If you don't feel it, well, it may turn out I'll be a good craftsman. When you speak about relationship, we see the emergence of virtual generation, which is very unsettled, and they require a direct contact, which requires certain competencies from teacher. From what you've said, we are not reinventing a wheel, so the most important competencies are not anything new, but something which we've seen around for many years. Or just as we talked before recording, when I'm thinking about my experiences, relationship-based teaching was not a common thing. So what should we do if we had this capability to change this school in such a way that it shapes the analytical, creative skills or the virtues that you refer to, the very fact that the classes, the groups will be smaller, what else do we need to make it successful? To make sure that this school is not churched in inverted commas. We should not sit on the chairs only, just rearrange the space. And in the internet we have so many presentations of various schools which are doing great with that, and it is quiet there. It's quiet there because they are busy doing interesting things. So that's a first thing. What else? Well, let me repeat, it is also a question of a very serious decision of everyone who is choosing this profession, whether he or she wants to do it. And I know it from my experience as an advisor that there are some often examples, maybe in the high school. For example, if we ask somebody, what were you doing in the kindergarten? I already wanted to be a teacher. I was playing as a teacher. So I'm giving you an example that certain skills, when we can observe these children well, if we do this good observation, then, well, this is what we are teaching our students. This is very important. And also, teaching which is friendly for a brain. What does it mean? And I'm a great fan of somebody who said that the brain of a student is his workplace. We are talking a lot about individualization, but do we actually carry it out? I have some doubts. I think that we also should take a larger picture view. I'm not a teacher, of course. I think that from the experiences that I have, we have to take care for the teachers. They are moving from one crisis to another crisis. We are ranking sixth worst salaried teachers. Well, we are not talking about this material support, but if we want to make sure that the education is student-oriented, then we have to take care for the well-being of teachers. I think that the crisis was the wake-up call which made us aware that teachers are very important. This is my reflection in the period of the crisis that we're going through. If I could add one sentence, when you said I'm not a teacher, but I'm also a parent, there are always three groups. We have students, we have the second parent, and a teacher. So there was also this relationship between a teacher and a parent. The parents realized that they also need to be teachers. For some it is difficult, for some it is easy. So there is this important point in Polish education, the relationship between the parent and the teacher. We are on the same side of the barrier. However, we are lacking this awareness on both sides. I would fully agree with you, because in this sense, the pandemic is an opportunity that as a society, as parents, we realized how important the school is in our lives. It is on two levels. It is difficult to teach. Also, the school is an important framework of our lives. The fact that teachers are going to the school enables us to function in different roles. So the experience of this difficult life is connected with the fact that the school is no longer a carer for our children, and this is very difficult for the parents. So this is a good starting point to create a certain alliance, which should be based on recognizing the fact that students are important, but teachers are most important. It's not that the school is about the teachers, but it's impossible to have school without teachers. So I also hear when you say that this is a purpose and mission-based profession. But I would like to prefer to talk about the professionalism of teachers. And I think that the foundation of the alliance between the teachers and parents should be the recognition of the professionalization of the teacher. Everyone thinks that we all know how to teach, but this is a certain trap, because quite often the parents think that they are the best experts when it comes to their children, which is not true. In this sense, this credit of believing in professionalization of teachers, that they are professionals, it would be a good thing. You all have an experience of working with teachers to some degree. We talked a lot about the mission, but you cannot construct the whole professional group based on the mission, but you can do something to better prepare them. What is missing in the preparation of the teachers of today, and divided into two subgroups, those who are being trained and are entering the profession, and we can prepare them, but also the whole group which is already in the profession and it's far from retirement. How we can help them? Let me start, because I have it well thought over, because this is what we deal with in our foundation at the Warsaw University. There was this eminent mathematician, Alex Klein. He was also preparing the mathematical teacher, and he said it is a very difficult job, because you have to double train a person. You have to refer back to his university background and his school background, and then he has to process it and then abandon it and start anew. He was talking about mathematics, but it refers to the whole experience of teaching the teachers. You have to do this double training, so move from what they've learned at the university and from what they've been through the school, and then process it. First, they need to process it and then forget about it. So these are two super important steps. If we don't do this first step, we are in a matrix, because then the teacher is mostly working on his pain and his difficult experiences, but if we leave him on the first stage, so flood him with a lot of soft trainings, he will be focused on himself. So these two stages must take place. This is the first thing connected with his attitude, with his ability to develop this relationship, and then we have the workshop, all the skills. So the knowledge what works. We've had a revolution in educational research, which shows us what is effective, but it's still not a mechanical knowledge which we can use and apply, but this is something which requires a professionalism and professional who is carefully observing the classroom and his group. Yes, that's true. This is quite a difficult thing, because recently I asked my students, future teachers, to describe what kind of competencies they need in terms of a parent and teacher during the pandemics. I received more than 20 responses, and especially those were interesting, where some were teaching despite of not being fully trained, and all those who were parents. It was quite moving in many cases how they were emotional about it. So this is this proof that, and the conclusion that a parent is teaching in a different way, because there is a different relationship between a parent and child, and this teacher is necessary. It is also an important element. If you mentioned a word training, it's been a source of my pain. I've been training teachers across Poland, and I have to admit that for me, the location of this training so far has not been sanctioned in any formal way. There is no feedback. The fact that they are doing some training assessment, it's not meaningful for us. For us, what is important is what you brought from this training. To propose to teachers that they should start to brainstorm in a group is very, very difficult, with one exception, and it worked out in many cases. If we do the mixed trainings from across Poland, this is a kind of struggle, because they are not endangered by the control and audit of their colleagues. So those trainings which are far from their original location are the best. They are most effective. We are contributing a lot of work to give them a lot of food for thought. But when they are only with their colleagues, they are not very willing to learn, and they are not very willing to confront their ideas. Well, we are trying to change it. We would like to create this open door culture and to foster this kind of culture. These are quite detailed thinking. The first thing is to accentuate properly. You said a lot about the lack of stabilization in terms of teacher, which makes it more difficult for them to develop, because it is difficult to focus on some important matters when you continue to have to adapt to changing bureaucracy. I understand that this foundation activity is targeting them. Well, I think this is a civilizational challenge. We have a lot of teachers to train. I think that one of the challenges that we can see, and the ladies can confirm it, on the market we can see the atomization of the professional world. This is signaled by the International Labour Organization. This atomization also pertains to the school, and these conditions can be referred to hierarchical or very competitive, and this competition is not very favorable, because this competition is not always fostering the solidarity or competition, which in times of pandemics is invaluable. When we are trying to focus on something which is good, I think that this cooperation based on solidarity and the community of schools includes not only the teachers but also the employees, the principals, making sure that these teachers can take part in this training, which is a very time-consuming training of the direct participation, the work you have to do, and this is still not sufficient, because in order to turn it into everyday life, you have to spend another 30 hours. It is a huge challenge, and this is a challenge for the school, but this is also a challenge for all the employers. We all, I think, have the similar experience when it comes to competencies of the future, no matter what is the institution we work for, and I think the litmus test is educational system. Now, a few words of my response. This is crucial, because the Polish school, we realize that for many years, and we've been trying to change the culture. This is a very individualistic culture. What we are not good at is developing this kind of solidarity, which makes the cooperation very effective. Because the crucial problem that we face is how we assess. Well, the descriptive evaluation is one of the ways to get out of this conundrum, but it's not sufficient, because we are facing many also societal challenges, because this is how we continue to assess. The idea is not to change it radically, but to realize it. We are talking a lot about school, about younger pupils, older students, but if we are going to teach them to a certain, to a bigger degree, and we are going to instill these virtues in them, where will we have the place for knowledge? Teaching of writing, reading and mathematics, but also acquiring the skills which are later useful to do work, is displayed in high schools, in vocational schools, at the level of studies, college studies. Should the college still continue to instill the virtues? I have a good example. When Opel company in Gliwice decided to make the first step, that they will take for the internship the students of the first year of vocational school. I was surprised when I was asked to prepare a cycle of short classes for these groups of employees who wanted to take care of these interns. And there was a dozen or so such meetings. And the result was huge, because at the end, the employees who were to take these interns under their wings, they said, "Anna, maybe let's start a university of grandfather or father, because if I had this such a knowledge, I could transfer it." So we found some people who approached it very seriously, and we started to think who you have in front of you. If you see your workstation, because these were just workstation instructions, what do you need to convey to these children? And let's take a look at them. Because, for example, he's not able to hold properly a screwdriver, but it is not his fault. You have to see what is his potential. What was very successful, and when I heard that Opel wants to work in Cichy, there was this initiative to repeat this experience. So we see this teacher who was a practical vocational teacher. And today, these workstations are placed in the schools. But it is good when we have an employer willing to organize such a workshop, because this student can learn not only about the workstation, but also about health and safety, and creating such an opportunity for students to have a contact regularly with the employer. And there is also this emergence of the master figure. And this is also a source of the professional ethos, which was kind of killed. And I'm not going to surprise you with saying that my parent worked in one place. I had 6 employers, and my children will have 6 employers at the same time. And what I experience is that we are changing the roles, and we can be in the role of the student at the age of 40, 50, so we'll always need to have this master facilitator. But I think this is this comes back to the idea of the living wisdom, and I think this is a sin which is committed by our generations and former generations, that we didn't appreciate this too much. When we ask the the employees what is the most important challenge. And we ask the employees, and I work in a workplace, in a company which employs many people. What is most important is intergenerational cooperation. And right now we are talking about the lifetime learning, where we don't have great results, in a sense that not many adult Poles participate in this lifetime learning, and I think we have to come back to what worked. What you are saying about this intergenerational solidarity and coming back to this living wisdom is, I think, very important, very important. I'm taking it away from this meeting, but answering your question, I would like to highlight an important thing, because we are talking about a turn to competencies. This is such a frequent rhetoric. I would like to highlight one important thing, that our position between knowledge and competence is false. We are not talking about giving up on knowledge and to gain only competencies. What we are trying to achieve is to achieve higher level of competencies, and knowledge is only one step. So we are learning in a more subtle way to operate on the knowledge in order to first achieve analysis, then synthesis, and then assessment of this knowledge. So these are more complicated, more sophisticated operations, and there is no opposition between those. But there is a certain novelty, but this is pertaining to the mass educational system. I'm talking about a holistic approach that you are talking a lot about. So a person is with emotions, with his attitudes, with his outside of the school life, and this outside life happens right now, and physicality. This is also a person who works with his hands. So, for example, a real school is a great concept which we are trying to import to Poland. And the fact that we are trying to integrate this academic knowledge and all the other spheres of life which we know are important, this is a novelty, but this is something which is not reinventing the well, but this is something what we should be doing. Sorry. But when we take into account this opposition between competencies and knowledge, I always thought that there were hundreds of definitions, but there's always three components. I think that to a certain degree, for a long time, the matters of attitudes were eliminated. I think that we are at the threshold. I think it pertains to these large employers when we appreciate this sphere, because we don't have this influence. Well, we can create skills, but when it comes to the values, here the employer has a very limited ability in a long term, so we see more and more models which make us to employ people based also on the virtues or values that a given individual has, and the skills can be taught. So I think this is a very good direction which we should not do away with. And this is one more problem with pandemics. The school is a model place where you can create certain attitudes, because you have 12 years, and there's one disquieting thing happening during the pandemics, is socializing the students to cope vis-a-vis the way how they are assessed during the pandemics. Some high school students are saying that the way way how their knowledge is being verified and assessed is really disquieting, because they found a lot of ways to hack into this system. We are witnessing a very disconcerting experiment which is bringing us as a society into the times of the People's Republic of Poland, and I think this is something which we are losing, and this will be a very serious problem. When I was preparing to this meeting, I would have never thought that we are going to talk so much about virtues. But I think that it is so very good that it was used here. And if I were to summarize what happened here over the last hour, is that if we are able to learn how to better teach and how to teach others, we are going to be left with these competencies till the end of our life, which will make it easier for us to catch up with the future, with the change, and it will make it easier for us to create these competencies, how to convey the knowledge, and we are going to spend much more time on participating in learning on the workstations. I would like to thank you very much for this meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much for 60 minutes spent with us in front of a screen. I would like to invite you to watch the reminder of our recordings, and I would like to thank the patrons of the conference, and these are main partner Orange Polska, additional partners, edis, E.ON Energy, IKEA Poland and Microsoft, as well as Visa. Substantive partners, which are European Council on Foreign Relations and German Marshall Fund of the United States. And a media partner, TOK FM Radio.